It was in my DNA. Everyone in my family. My
Nice.
grandfather started his own
Okay.
company. My
Okay.
dad, growing up, ended up starting a juice company and sold that to Jamba Juice. Started
Oh
an
wow.
ice
Okay.
cream company, sold that to Haagen-Dazs. I've been
Nice.
always been around.
We got a new episode of the One Podcast here with Sam from Treasury. This is going to be an interesting one. He's heavily involved in kind of the startup community, had multiple companies, currently doing a FinTech. So obviously very relevant to our accelerator kind of cohort in that space. Sam, can you kind of give everybody just a quick 30-second intro to you and what you're currently doing, and then we can kind of get into your background?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Sweet.
So my background is, like you said, primarily been in startups, and I've always been a very much on the builder side of companies. Treasure's my fourth company so far to date, and it was a problem that
Nice.
we had actually at my last business. But ultimately, understanding what financial stewardship is, and how to actually approach financial stewardship in a way that creates better financial responsibility for every business is really what Treasury is all about. And what we've done is created a platform that makes it easy to connect your cash, invest it in a way that is aligned with those principles, and therefore making your company a lot safer, de-risking it, and obviously giving it more money at the same time.
Cool. Yeah, I think that has a lot of relevance. Obviously, nobody has really done that well, so it's a super interesting kind of niche that you're carving out as well. But so I guess you mentioned the four companies, right? Were you always an entrepreneur? This is a question I kind of ask everybody, but how did you get
Yeah,
into kind of entrepreneurship and startups in general?
it certainly was in my DNA. Everyone in my family has done their own companies. My
Nice.
grandfather, he's definitely the one that I would say I've always looked up to the most. Started his own
Okay.
company. My dad,
Okay.
growing up, he was a real estate guy. Ended up starting a juice company, and then sold that to Jamba Juice. Started
Oh
an
wow.
ice cream
Okay.
company, sold that to Haagen-Dazs. So, I mean, I've
Nice.
always been around it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So it's interesting. A lot of people that I talk to are similar, have a similar backstory. So the nature over nurture there's
Oh yeah.
definitely a component. So I guess what was your first rodeo, and how did that go?
Oh gosh, the first one was a business called Drink Wine 360, and so that business,
Okay.
which really tipped me off on kind of the common thread I've had with all of my companies, which is regulatory arbitrage. I'll get into that in a sec, but with
Okay.
Drink Wine, what we were doing was creating a marketing concept for vineyards so that they could essentially have a relationship with their end customer, the person drinking the wine, but doing so without having to go around all the distribution channels that they have built out. Um, what we did was we put a QR code on a bottle of wine, made it very easy for them the user to scan it, and now they would have a virtual tour in front of them with they could look down using the
Oh, no
accelerometer.
way.
They could see the dirt, they could see the vines, they could repurchase the wine, all that stuff. Doing that, though, what we quickly realized was that you had to submit any change you ever make to a bottle of wine, whether it's new or already existing, through the Firearm, Tobacco, and Alcohol Administration.
Regulation stuff. Oh wow.
Exactly.
So even with
So,
that, there would be okay. So there was a lot of overhead, I guess, or just red tape.
well, it took 6+ months to even submit a QR code on a bottle of wine, so we had to find a
Oh
way
no
around
way.
that.
Okay.
We got it down to 2 weeks, and by doing that, that kind of overhauled the entire business for us, and we really became a submission company because of that regulatory loophole.
Cool. So what how long were you doing that for, and kind of what was the end outcome?
So start to finish, did that for about 14 months. Very quick business, and ended up selling that to a bottling plant over in the
Nice.
Czech Republic. They came in, quickly bought it. First time I ever seen a check like that, and definitely could have
Gets you going.
definitely left a lot of money on the table, but at the same time, it was got my first win, and so I was really excited about
Yeah.
that. I was about 20 years old at the time,
Yeah.
and it was awesome.
Do you think people get a little too hung up on what I'm saying, the actual market? Because I can just see the whole regulation thing, all that stuff kind of ties back into what you're currently doing, and I guess and the lessons that you've learned. But
Mhm.
do you feel like people get a little too hung up on hey, we got to stick with this one niche, and I don't want to, not wanting to exit or pivot quickly to their next sort of business?
Well, I think your go to market, which is very different than what is the exit outcome or potential, that any company faces. And I think as you navigate, all the twists and turns of running a startup, you hit to a point where, okay, it
Sure.
might make sense to actually start thinking about M&A because the market is consolidating, much faster, or whatever is happening at a macro standpoint. But from a micro, making those decisions is always about what's going on, understanding that, and then what is the true value that you hold inside the business.
Got it. Do you
Yeah,
have a
people need
technical?
to.
Yeah. Just like quick aside on it, like, do you have a technical background? Like, how was as far as just creating the technology for that, engineers, that type of thing?
That one was more of a regulatory issue, and
Issue.
then I
Yeah.
had a buddy at the time who helped me with coding. I'm not an engineer, no, so I don't have necessarily a technical background.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've
Well, do
learned
you have a
enough.
co-founder on the engineering side? I guess that was more my question.
That one I just did myself, and I hired a guy
Nice.
to help me with the engineering stuff. So.
Okay, cool. So I guess at what point after that are you doing Kirby?
So Kirby was one actually I did simultaneously while I was building a distillery.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
I had been doing distillery for a couple of years at that point. Was starting to see some stuff take place, and I was living in Santa Monica at the time, and there was always tons of traffic that was taking place. We had all these
Sure.
restaurants popping up, and it was the right time for something like that to come out. And also in that one, we quickly realized that you have to essentially go and you have to submit a new form of traffic flow
Yeah.
with every municipality, that you're going into. And that took a lot of time to actually go and make those changes, get those approvals. And once accepted, then we could actually, get it into the market. So it was an interesting company.
Yeah.
And another short one too. We did that for about, I think in total, 18 months. There was 4 of us in that one that all partnered together. And that was actually a funny story, given that we had 2 companies, both named the same thing, both started at the same time. I had 2 guys that I didn't know at all. We were all in Santa Monica, and it was me and this
Nice.
other guy. We ended up meeting. We ran into each other at a restaurant, and we ended up all merging and just joining forces. And so it was a cool way to see that thing come together. And ultimately, we figured it was best to sell all of our technology that we had built. We were really good at technology. We were not good at marketing. That was our fail point. But we realized that, and fortunately, we were able to get an exit fairly very quickly.
Were you using a similar kind of, I guess, from that first company? I can already see like a lot of similarities, I guess, on how you were running that. You know what I'm saying? And just like the process, were you using a lot of the same assets or just like strategies that you had built in the first company?
Strategies for sure. Yeah. Looking
Yeah.
at what is the model. And at that point, yeah, the process of how to scale it was all done through, what was the
Yeah.
approach in terms of connecting with the municipality. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
we created some standardized processes that allowed us to roll it up.
And then with the idea, like I get how it was super timely, obviously with like Santa Monica at the time. Like, did you go through a couple ideas, or was that one where it's sort of just locked in based on like what you were surrounded with?
There's definitely iterations, but I would say iterations were more challenged by technical limitations and
Sure.
what was possible at the time. We didn't
Okay.
have
Cool.
autonomous cars, but we could there's a lot of ways that we could have approached the solution.
Sure.
What we could do was based on what we could technically create at the time.
How are you? I'm just curious. I guess like in terms of like marketing an app like that, it's obviously sort of like a two-sided marketplace, right? You have the customers and the valets. What's like your sales and marketing, I guess, approach to hit both sides of that?
When we started it, we did start as a consumer
Only.
play, but then quickly switched over to B2B. And so our whole
Got it.
go-to-market strategy was by selling it to as a subscription fee. We sold it to the actual restaurants, and because they're the ones ultimately hiring those valet companies.
For them.
And so
Okay.
then we ended up actually targeting all the valet companies, and then we focused pretty much specifically on hotels and like emergency rooms, hospitals, like large
Nice.
conference centers.
Okay, and so then they were kind of laying out the app, I guess, or the service for their
Exactly. Yeah.
clientele, so to speak. Okay, that makes total
Otherwise,
sense.
we had to get the entire, like the trend at the time was everyone was using cash. And so you have to basically convince every business out there to stop using cash for valet, which was the industry norm. And now you're going against, consumer behaviors, which just takes a longer time to implement and change.
Got it. And so you were doing distillery at the same time as this, or started around the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so distillery, we started in 2014. It was me and my co-founder, Andre. Actually, sorry, it was maybe 2013, but it was right around that time, and was building that one up. So Andre, my co-founder, he was from Russia. He had started it originally as something where he was just essentially selling developers or outsourced development to large companies. And what we did was we ended up creating that into a real go-to-market studio where we took your idea as an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur and help you go from concept to marketplace in a 6-month timeline.
Nice. Was it any particular type of, were you focusing on certain types of companies, I guess, or who what was
Models,
a typical sort of thing? Yeah,
we started to focus our niches on specific business models. Yeah,
okay,
and that's where we started to seeing a lot more traction take off.
Got it. So what types of business models were most successful, I guess, or the easiest to, not the easiest to build, but the most rewarding to, what I'm saying, build out, get to market?
Yeah, so I mean, this was right when the idea of a SaaS, subscription-based model was becoming very popular. People were trying to understand how to get that into a mobile app that became viral or had that Z-score component to it, and so that's where we really started focusing. Then we started breaking off into other different models. Whether it was more of a service model, we worked on quite a bit of FinCo models and a few other ones that were a little more unique too.
Nice, cool.
But our
I guess
was ultimately still outsourced development. We had a
Sure.
really promising program. We took all our developers and we put them in the office of any of our customers on a 3-week rotation.
Yeah. I've marketed a few companies that are pretty similar, I think, to what you were doing with distillery. So I get the model. I think for the audience, what was there? What were the biggest challenges for companies going that path and outsourcing? I don't know if you would call it outsourcing because you're having the people be in their offices and whatnot. But what? Yeah. What are the biggest kind of challenges? It still is. Yeah.
And ultimately, the biggest challenge though is you're building that trust and how do you get them up to speed fast enough? I mean, whenever a new developer comes into a company, the first 6 months, even a year sometimes, is spent just getting up to speed. So how do you do that in a very successful way? And so we would tend to either make it more project based or we would have quite a bit of pre-work that we would do in terms of documentation so that there was really zero overlap time for them getting up to speed. And that was a huge value add to our customer at the time.
Got it.
And we also didn't, factor our engineers. So if they were in the office for 3 weeks and they went back to one of our offices and outside the U.S., they were still dedicated to the account. And we had people that were with those accounts for 2, 3, 4 years.
Nice. Cool. So I guess at what point are you hey, I want to break back in and do you know what I'm saying, and start another company, and why was it? How did you come up with the treasury management stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, the coolest thing about an agency is that you get so much exposure to so many different ideas and concepts and models, and you get to always look at what are the trends.
I agree with that.
Macro. And so was always very very keen on fintech. That was always a big part of running any business is finance, but doing so in a way that was truly financially responsible and maintaining a financially fit mindset for a business was always a challenge. You had to either trust your CFO to do that really well, or you had to kind of do it yourself, and you're tethered with a bunch of different challenges if that's the case. And so that's where kind of the idea for Treasury came. We had 10 months of runway. It was just sitting there, wasn't doing anything. Decided to then go to the bank and say, hey, can we get a little bit better? I think we're getting 5 basis points at the time, with that cash. They really exposed kind of their world to me, that you have to have at least 40 million with them at all times if you're going to be able to obtain a higher yield through the bank. And so that's where I was like, okay, screw this. We're going to go find an opportunity elsewhere. Was introduced to the CFO of Airbnb at the time, a gentleman named LT. And he's the one who really, I would say, exposed me to that world of corporate treasury, and was just blown away by how Airbnb, 30% of the revenue comes from treasury, from that treasury department.
That's nuts. Wow.
All based, yeah. I mean, it's so much cash that they're able to, well, I mean, there's a lot of power from a balance sheet that people don't really know about. A lot of these large corporations know about it. They've, certainly unlocked it. And so that's really what we want to do, is democratize the ability to manage your cash like these large corporations, but in a very simplistic way for small, medium-sized business.
Got it. Okay. So I think, a lot of business owners and people who watch the podcast would understand sort of in theory that kind of, that the potential to utilize the, treasury in that way. But like in practice, what does it actually look like for them?
Well, if you're not using treasury, if you're trying to approach this on your own, it's a very cumbersome process, because you gotta understand what your balance sheet is, understand what your cash is and where it's sitting, whether it's in one account or 10 different accounts. Then you have to take, whatever that idle cash amount is going to be, and you have to start then going and putting that into treasury bills or a money market account, or if you're wanting to, introduce a little bit of risk, but done so in a way that's still fiscally conservative, then you can look at corporate treasury corporate bonds and fixed income. On top of that, then you have to weigh that against, what's going on in terms of macro trends and how is that going to be affecting you over the next 6 months. And you're doing a constant battle of just weighing your existing portfolio, how to ladder that out and do so in a way that is congruent with your current cash flows. You're just there's a lot of monitoring, there's a lot of analysis, and there's a lot of tracking. So that's what they essentially don't have to do at all by using Treasury. And that's the benefit that we give to them is full active management on a daily basis. But that helps them achieve much better yield than they're going to get, by going to Schwab or Mercury or another neobank.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about like the bulk of small businesses out there who, you know what I'm saying, is the main reason why they wouldn't sort of utilize their treasury in this way? Like, is that, I almost said utilize their treasure. Is the main reason these sort of technical limitations are just like the cost associated with like doing it the right way?
But not so much the cost, but the time. It's just a massive amount of time for this, single CFO or financial manager that doesn't have a team behind him. Maybe he has one person, or maybe he has a CPA or someone that's helping him close the books. But most companies don't have somebody that is focused on treasury. That is a newer concept that small, medium-sized business. And I look at companies between 1 million to, let's say, 100 million in revenue. That's kind of who we focus as far as small, medium business.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting because I had this is like total side note, but I had a few clients randomly just like 2-3 years ago where they were like doing like treasury management and trying to get small business to put their treasury into like Bitcoin. And so that was like their whole API was focused on that. I was like, I like the idea of like using the treasury more effectively, but you know what I'm saying? This might not be,
that's the common mishap is people chase yield, and you can't chase yield.
Sure.
You have to manage your yield based on that ratio of what you can afford. But ultimately 90% of your assets should be in a no risk, type account or type investment.
Got it.
You should not be exposed. Your fiduciary responsibility should be the factor alone that negates you from, putting your cash into anything risky. So it has to be done in the right way.
Got it. So was the API component, was that always a piece of it, or were you initially doing it like more as a service?
So as we continue to grow our platform, we quickly got up to around 200-300 companies over a 12-month period. And from there, realized that we were really good at the investment piece of it, and that a lot of companies out there could certainly be offering a much more responsible, a much better type of yield product to their customer base. And that's where, for like end-to-end payment companies, anyone who has a wallet or any of these businesses out there, that are offering, any kind of yield to their customer base, Treasury now can wrap our entire thing as an API, embed that into your platform so you can offer it to your end users. And that's what our API is designed to do, is give the best of what Treasury does to any business that wants to embed it.
Got it. Cool. So I guess what are with this type of company versus like the previous app companies and like.
You there?
There you go. Sorry, I just paused the recording by accident there. So with the TreasureFi kind of model as opposed to the previous companies you did and the agency, what are some like the new challenges that emerged? I got to imagine a lot of it is around the technology and stuff like that. But what are some of the new challenges, I guess, with this company as opposed to your previous companies in those first 3 years of doing it?
So, what are the challenges with Treasury? Sorry, you broke up a little bit. You said the challenges with Treasury?
My bad. Yeah. What are the different challenges? Oh, you know what, Sam? So, what are with Treasure versus your previous companies? What are some of the challenges that popped up in the first 3 years of doing it that you wouldn't have expected, and kind of how did you deal with them?
Yeah, so I mean, Treasure started in 2018, and so we were building for the first couple of years. I mean, first challenge, I would say that the amount of infrastructure that we had to build and what it took just to get this thing up and running was much heavier than we expected. On top of that, we quickly grew our assets a lot faster, and so once you cross that 100 million threshold, you have to be registered with the SEC. You had to become an RIA, and so those were all pieces that we knew about. We had a path forward. But then, at the onset of the pandemic, that changed all of it. It certainly slowed a lot of things down and it forced us to approach certain challenges in new ways. And so I would say that learning to build a company now in a very distributed manner, where no one's working at the same office, like that has been, me personally, my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
That has been one that I've struggled with. Just how do you be an effective leader and not just from a management standpoint, but more from a leadership and from a CEO role.
Sure.
It's been a unique one that I'm still working through.
We had a lot of people on who are like involved in SaaS sales, kind of like gurus, so to speak, or just like B2B sales gurus in general. How do you think as the leader of this distributor team, how do you think about things like hiring for sales and marketing and building those teams out now that you're kind of, 5-6 years in?
I would say sales similar to engineers. They're the ones that it's okay if they're not in the office. What the challenge is then, how do you maintain that camaraderie and how do you maintain that competition that salespeople love so much? Which
the gong,
the gong, catalyst, whatever you want to, use to spiff things up. But that's exactly what it is all of those little things that make sales on a day-to-day basis fun. Instead of it being a slog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if you've experimented with any of these like kind of gamification, like leaderboards and stuff like that you could do with like a remote sales team.
We've tried a few things in Slack, but there hasn't been anything that we've seen, too much. We ended up creating some dashboards and stuff that are always living on our home screens. But yeah, like I said, haven't come across too much stuff. We do a lot of offsites. We go to quite a few conferences. So there's ways that we have worked around it, I guess. And we have a heck of a lot of fun whenever we go to these conferences. And I mean, Money 2020 every year is just a blast. And as we continue to grow, we'll be able to hopefully partake in more sponsorship activity, which will, I think, also create more opportunities for us to get together as a team, along with our community. The other thing that we started doing were these community dinners. And so once a quarter, we have a community dinner in a different city. And anybody who's on the team in that city, they're always welcome to come too.
Yeah. Yeah. My brother had been working at Brex for like 4 years as a, GTM and AE under Sam Blond. And I'm always curious how these like bigger companies are sort of managing like a big kind of remote, remote sales team. But it definitely seems like the offsites and stuff like that is a key piece of kind of maintaining that, you know what I'm saying?
And
some of that culture.
How do you make it not corporate? How do you maintain that startup feel?
The vibe as well. Yeah. That's like another, and that's a big issue for hiring, I guess, as well too. You know what I'm saying? Because if you have this kind of button up corporate environment, you might not get the people who are like really gonna be able to communicate the product. benefits. You know what I'm saying as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And
how
that kind of goes back to, oh yeah, go ahead.
keep going? Sorry.
No, I was just saying like that goes back to what you were saying earlier too, but just you're constantly navigating the
Yeah,
stages of a company and the attraction to a company just based on where you're at. I mean, it's always a different challenge just given the stage of any business.
nice. How about marketing? Any like particular channels that have worked or like big campaigns that you guys have run where it's like, that you've just had like a great experience with or want to share?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn actually has been an amazing channel for us, and what we started doing is just highlighting a lot more of
LinkedIn.
our partners. We spend a
Yeah, I
lot more
saw
time.
some of that.
Yeah, not only tells people I think about who we're at, who's in our ecosystem, but also just kind of gives them those updates and lets them see what we're doing, the activity we're making, and are we becoming more aligned with them or are we becoming less aligned? I mean, it helps.
Nice.
The more that we can pre-qualify a person that comes to us, the better it's going to be. I mean, we always want to shorten our sales cycle, and so giving people more information, getting people more excited, that's something that we are leveraging quite a bit when it comes to the marketing side. And LinkedIn has been a great channel for us on that.
How difficult is the actual onboarding? Like, is there a lot of hand holding or parties that kind of have to be involved there? Or is it pretty sort of self-explanatory as far as getting them set up? And
Yeah, it takes about 10 minutes to get set up if you're just a business
okay,
signing into our platform.
nice.
And for our API, you can have that integrated up and running in production within 14 days, we've seen.
Got it. So it isn't a thing where it's like a ton of cost associated with actually like maintaining the customer and that type of thing.
No, it's an incredibly cost effective thing for any business because we
Got
take
it.
all the regulatory burden, we take all of the compliance needs, we do all of the
Yeah.
KYC for your customers, we do everything for you when it comes to that API.
Cool. What I guess right now, like at the stage that you're at, like what's the biggest sort of focus for you as a company?
So I'd say that right now, like we are this isn't too newsworthy or exciting or anything, but we're really focusing on creating a better work life balance for everybody at the company,
Got
and
it.
that means in some areas we're scaling down, in some areas we're scaling up, and trying to understand really what is the impact of any individual as we progress into this kind of next stage of the business overall.
Got it.
We launched our API product. We've seen some great success already with that. And we know that that's going to continue to be our future for at least the next 6 months. We have a lot of stuff on the roadmap, but we're also not going to get ahead of ourselves. Like that's constantly what I'm trying to tether myself to is to not get overly excited about something that could be a trend or that may not prove to be advantageous for the company. And so it's just it's a strategy game for us right now. And I love strategy though, so that is also exciting for us. But there's so many unknowns, and trying to really focus on what is in our control, and
Yeah.
really just let whatever the variables are going to be happen.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people you have at the company now or on the team overall?
There's about 18 of us right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the hardest part of the company is managing you know what I'm saying? Is managing the people. Like obviously getting the company off the ground is its own sort of beast. Like it went in the beginning, but once you're going, like I find that to be like for the founder at least, that's kind of like that does become your main priority, right?
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah. I mean
just the people management. You know what I'm saying? And you just talking to everybody. It seems like that's the
well, you
number
shift
one
from working on the business to working
in the
in the
business.
business a heck of a lot
Yeah.
more. So.
Yeah. Are you doing anything, I guess, like, this is just a question that I have because in businesses that I've done, this is always the stage where I like sort of start to have issues. But I guess, have you like not outsourced, but like in terms of like hiring people to run HR or like redo sort of company asset, internal resources and protocols and stuff like that. So like, I guess as you scale up that team, like, is there anything that you brought in like external to you that has been helpful or like a certain team member, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we have tried to use some external resources, but that has never been something that we're all that successful with. I would
Yeah.
say from like an SEO standpoint, that's a great one to outsource for us. But anything that needs quality control, like design, obviously development, QA, a lot of those things that are easy to outsource. There's a lot of resources out there. just is one that we see such a drop in quality that we've stayed away from doing that too much.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Overall, I guess sort of just tying everything together, what are your, obviously you've had a sort of long career, bunch of different businesses. Now you're super focused on Treasure. What's like your biggest sort of takeaways for entrepreneurs that are, kind of getting started? Maybe they sold their business and they're looking for the next kind of thing to do, but like what are your kind of 2 or 3 main takeaways from your whole entrepreneurial career?
I would say that it's awesome to be passionate about an idea, and it's great to have an awesome idea, but being strategic about it and laying out the strategy and then just constantly reworking the plan was something that was a lesson that I've had to learn too many times now. But setting a plan and then just working the plan until you hit that next milestone, or you quickly see that it's going to fail and it's just not for you. But just being brutally honest about it and letting the data speak for itself is obviously, I think, one of the best things that any first time founder can focus on. And then 100% find the right partner. I mean, you're whether it's a co-founder or a partner. For me, like my weaknesses are operations. Like I suck at operational, operating, and
got it.
That's something that is tough. I'm a dreamer. Like I get distracted very easily. I want to talk to the people. I don't want to do the follow up. And so making sure you have a team that can either support that or the right person that can support it is super important.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is sort of a bonus question, but I guess like what you were talking about Santa Monica before, like any particular cities? I think what are you in Arizona now?
In Arizona now, we just moved here. We were in so Santa Monica was there for about 10 years. I was in San Francisco for about 6, and then we just had our second little girl, and my wife wanted to be close to family. So
family time, yeah. But what's the hottest, I guess, market or city for starting a FinTech company?
Oh, I would say San Francisco is dwindling. I would say LA is still a good scene. New York is definitely still a good scene, but there's so many of these tech hotspots. But going into one of the tech hotspots is I think important for starting a company. So you need access to as much of those other people that are enthusiastic about development and building cutting edge technology and really evolving the ecosystem. More access and the more camaraderie you can get around that, the better.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Sam, thanks for coming on. Where can people find you? Are you hiring? Any reason for people to reach out for you, or what do you want to kind of link to?
Absolutely. I mean, love to help anybody with obviously managing their idle cash, but Sam at treasure.tech is my email. And then you also find me on LinkedIn too.
Oh yeah. And Sam, you may have mentioned that before, but like what kind of cash do companies have to be sitting on where they can like take good advantage of what you guys are offering?
That, at least 250,000 would be
okay,
so that you can start seeing value. And but
nice.
We have a lot
but they can go in even with like a low amount. It doesn't have to be something that's like crazy. Like they could go in even with like a kind of amount like that and get some good value.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we have companies that come to us with even 50K. They end up usually depositing a little more, but that's certainly something that we can accommodate.
Interesting.
Sure. Yeah, but treasurefinancial.com, take a look, and love to help you.
Cool. Thanks, guys. This is One Podcast.
Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Now I'm basically starting a new company, which is going to be an app market.